In this lessons episode, we explore the evolving landscape of asset classes within Web3, covering sectors like crypto, NFTs, DeFi, and the Metaverse. Learn about the unique potential and future of NFTs beyond art, the transition from companies to communities, and why Web3 SaaS might be the next big wave. Dive in for insights on how these sectors are set to shape the digital economy of tomorrow. And I'm curious because you're living it and you're in it so much. When you look at all these new, I guess, asset classes, but also like what I mean by asset classes, it's maybe not be the right term, but you have crypto, and then you have like Web3 projects, you have DeFi projects, you have Metaverse projects, you have NFT projects. Do you feel like, and this is probably something like, this is like more of a personal question. Do you feel like these will all maintain the same momentum? Like, do you feel like Metaverse is going to maintain the same, Metaverse investment in projects are going to maintain the same momentum as NFTs, and they're going to maintain the same momentum as crypto? And like, there's so many different things like that even you've captured on Mudrex, but that people can now put their money into. It's becoming a different set of confusing, right? Because if you think about it, it's almost like when you are investing in stock buckets and you invest in different groupings of stocks, right? Like, and you can invest in tech stocks, you can invest in like, global stocks or North American, and you can set your risk tolerance. But there's so many different things now. So do you see them all being around in the next 10 years? Like, not even just profitable, but do you see like Metaverse always being a thing, NFTs always being a thing that our people are going to invest in? Or do you see this to be more of like it's relevant now, it's something that's hot now, but in 5 years from now, we're just going to be really focused back on crypto again? Is it something that's short term or long term? Is, I guess, my question.
So I think the theme will stay, but the players will change. So NFTs will be there, but the current projects doing NFTs might change, right? Metaverse will be there, but the current popular projects in Metaverse will change. And in fact, I shouldn't say might, they will most likely change, because such is life, right? Like 90% of companies that were in the S&P 500 20 years ago aren't there today.
Of course.
And that's a reality. Having said that, the S&P 500 is there. And which again goes back to our argument of why thematic baskets are important. Because like a basket helps you bet in an idea and not a particular project, right? So the constituent of that basket might continue to change over time, but the idea still remains. So Metaverse as a sector will continue to grow. NFT as a sector will continue to grow, but whether the individual constituents of NFT and Metaverse will grow or not, that's of course dependent on what those individual projects end up doing, what's their life cycle, how is competition, and so on and so forth.
See, what always messed with me is I understand the utility of crypto. I understand the utility of Web3 projects and even some DeFi projects. There can be like actual utility. When I look at Metaverse, I can see utility as well. Actually, NFTs in particular, I find it's hard to tie utility to NFTs. Like, it's like even more of and maybe you can speak to some projects that you've seen that are counter to what I'm saying, because I'm sure there are some. And I know that, for example, like, okay, we're just going to use like cliches, like Gary Vee is very big on NFTs, and he speaks a lot about how you tie like NFTs to like actual tangible like events that I think if he sells an NFT, he gets people who buy that NFT get access to his conference, for example. So there's like an actual tangible thing tied to it. But I see a lot of NFTs are more like an art market, right? So there isn't a lot of tangible items tied to it. Do you feel like that could be a detriment to the growth of NFTs in particular? Or do you feel like more NFT projects are starting to try and find ways to actually tie a tangible, valuable item to the purchase of artwork?
So I genuinely think we haven't even scratched the surface of what NFTs are. Let's try and for a second just talk about what an NFT is, right? Like, as the name suggests, non-fungible tokens means that it's a token that's unique. And if you look at our real world, there are actually more things that are unique than there are generic, right? For example, the books that you have behind you are fairly unique. Like the property that you own is fairly unique, the phone that you own is fairly unique, and for that matter, your resume is fairly unique. Like your identity and your status hierarchy in your, let's say, organization is fairly unique. And all of these things are fairly unique. And today, the only unique things that we've kind of sort of set up and got ready in the NFT world is essentially art. So we just literally look at one small part that actually doesn't affect a vast majority of people. So let me give you an example of how people are thinking about NFTs. So there's a friend of mine who's building a project out in the DAO tooling space. Well, by that, what I mean is that they are helping DAOs figure out how should they get their contributors to work together. And one interesting idea that they are working on is that how can they create an NFT resume of everyone, which means that it's an on-chain resume that has these 15 different properties. And let's say, for the sake of simplicity, let's say that on that resume, there is a property that says tech. And in that tech part, you have some skills for Python, some skills for Java, some skills for front end, and so on and so forth. So they're trying to figure out a way as how can they create this resume using NFT rewards that individual DAOs can give to their contributors and scale up from there. So effectively, how do you kind of sort of attribute unique properties, unique contributions that you get that on chain and make sure that that's cemented and stays there? So from the NFT specific perspective, I think we are literally just scratching the surface. And as time progresses, all the things that we felt were unique goods or services in the real world will probably continue to move towards the internet and the digital world via this route. Now, of course, a lot of these might become completely useless. For example, a ticket to a conference can be made into an NFT, but once the conference is done, that NFT is basically useless. Like, what are you going to do with a ticket stub? And that's perfectly fine, right? So as a result, how does that NFT have long-term value is a separate problem. And things like art do have long-term value. Things like a particular project that you did for a particular company on your resume does have long-term value, but a ticket stub to a conference does not. And we should be okay with that. Right. Different purposes for it.
What I think was interesting was I always found the tokenization of things to make sense. Tokenization of unique IP to make sense. But then it seemed like NFT became synonymous with art for some strange reason, just because, like you're saying, it was like the first iteration of NFT. It's just scratching the surface. But there's so many other ways that tokenizing something so that it can be transferred and not duplicated and tracked can be a very useful mechanism.
Absolutely.
If you 100%. But I thought it was strange that there was blockchain companies that were trying to tokenize different things, records, like all these different items, like fixing supply chain issues and whatnot, like through tokenization of data points almost. And then it just turned into like a whole bunch of artwork, which is just strange. Yeah.
Well, think of it this way, right? Pets.com went bust in 1999, but there is an entire gamut of online pet companies now that are thriving and growing rapidly, right? So it's not necessarily that the first iteration should work out, right? Like it's the attempts that people are trying to do. And that's why this space is so hot, right? Like the smartest minds of our generation today are saying that the world and how are essentially coming back and saying that how the world has evolved over the last 300, 400, 500 years fundamentally needs to change if we want to move more and more towards the internet. And Web3 is all about capturing, attributing, and transferring value for the value that individuals are trying to create, whether that be the value created by a service, whether that be the value created by a good or whatever. And crypto and blockchain truly opens that space up, right? That's why it's very unique, and that's why it's like inherently attractive to so many smart people, and it just continues from there.
Right? And last question on this. As you see all these different categories and sections, like we see like NFT and DeFi and crypto and Web3 and Metaverse, are there any sectors that are not popular yet that you found? Like, what is the future evolution of some of these sectors that may not be categorized yet, that like you in particular are excited about because they're so new? Is there something that we haven't heard of?
Correct. So like, and again, this is another conversation that I was just having last week with a friend of mine. See, one very interesting sector that I really like is that is how are you getting people together and getting them to work, right? Like all of crypto is essentially communities coming together, working on a small problem. solving that problem and moving ahead to the next problem, right? Like that's basically all of crypto is, which means that in the traditional world, we had companies, now we had communities. Now, if this analogy is true, in the traditional world, we had tech agencies help out companies with their tech. We had marketing agencies help out companies with their marketing. We had HR agencies help out companies with their HR. We had payroll agencies help out companies with their payroll, right? And if all of these kinds of SaaS services were built out around companies to help them either serve their employees or their customers better, I expect all of this to get recreated in the community side as well, right? Because at the end of the day, the problems remain the same. Does the nature in which they are executed change? So communities today need help with how should they get their contributors to contribute more. Communities need help in terms of keeping their users sticky. Communities need help in terms of outreaching to their users in kind of sort of an on-chain way without having an email address attached and associated with them, right? And I think this Web3 SaaS effective kinds of industry is now just going to get kickstarted off, because I think we've now reached like a critical mass of communities and DAOs where it starts to make sense for me to build businesses and tools that help contribute and improve the kind of state of DAOs and communities that are. And I think the next couple of years will actually be, we will actually end up seeing a lot of companies come out in this space that help communities out.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this valuable, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you want to dive deeper into this conversation, check out the links in the description to watch the full episode. See you in the next one.